let's talk about the most complex, most fascinating machine on the entire planet, the human mind. I mean, you get user guides for your phone, for your coffee maker, but what about a user's guide for you? Well, this is it.
It really all boils down to one massive question, doesn't it? What makes you, you? Seriously, what's the hidden logic behind your thoughts? Where do your fears come from? And what's the blueprint for your biggest dreams? This isn't just late-night philosophy. It's the absolute core of psychology, the science of our own inner world.
So here's our game plan. Think of this as an architect's tour of the mind. First, we're going to look at the historical foundations, the blueprints, if you will. Then, we'll check out the psychologist's toolkit. After that, we'll take a quick tour through a map of the mind's major functions. And finally, we'll get a little peek at where this whole field is headed next.
Okay, so let's start with those blueprints. To really get what psychology is today, we have to see where its big ideas came from. And it turns out, the quest to understand the mind didn't just pop up in a lab somewhere. It's this amazing global story with really ancient roots. The whole field really pulls from two giant traditions. On one side, you have Eastern systems like yoga and Buddhism, which taught that real knowledge comes from looking inward, through introspection and meditation. But on the other side, you've got the Western tradition, starting way back with the ancient Greeks, which focused on the external world, on observing and measuring behavior from the outside. Modern psychology is basically this incredible conversation between looking in and looking out.
So once psychology became a formal science in the West, wow, it evolved at lightning speed. And each big idea was basically a reaction to the last one. First, you had the structuralists who tried to map the mind like a chemist maps molecules. Then the behaviorists came along and said, forget the mind. If you can't see it, it doesn't count. But then humanistic psychology pushed back hard, arguing, hey, we're more than just rats in a maze. And finally, the cognitive revolution kind of brought it all back together, using new tools to scientifically explore the very thoughts the behaviorists threw out. It's this incredible back and forth that built the field we have today.
Okay, so we've got the blueprints. Now let's open up the toolkit. How do psychologists actually build knowledge? They're not just guessing. They use a really specific set of tools to construct solid answers, piece by piece.
And the master tool in that kit, it's the scientific method. It's this powerful four-step loop that just keeps going. You start with a question. You make a testable guess, that's your hypothesis. Then you design a study to actually collect data. And finally, you analyze what you found and share it with the world, which, you guessed it, almost always leads to brand new questions. This process is what separates scientific psychology from just, armchair philosophy.
But here's the tricky part, right? How in the world do you measure something you can't see, like happiness or anxiety? This is where a super important tool comes in, the operational definition. It's all about taking a fuzzy, abstract idea and defining it in a way that is concrete and measurable. So happiness might become the number of times a person genuinely smiles in an hour, or maybe a score of 8 or higher on a wellness survey. It's how science makes the invisible visible.
And to gather all that data, psychologists have a whole garage full of methods. You can't really understand playground dynamics with a questionnaire, right? So you might use observation. But if you want to know the political pulse of 1 million people, a survey is the perfect tool. The key is always choosing the right tool for the right question.
All right, we've got the blueprints, we've got the tools, so let's take a quick tour of the building itself. Psychology is a huge place with tons of different departments, and each one is focused on a specific piece of the human puzzle. So let's do a little lightning round. First up, the biological department. This is where we look at the actual hardware, the brain, our neurons, our genes, to figure out how our physical body gives rise to our thoughts and feelings. It's the mind's engine room. Next up, learning and memory. This is all about how we grab new information, file it away, and then, hopefully, pull it back out later. This is literally the science of how every single thing you experience changes who you are.
And this brings us right back to our very first question. Personality psychology looks at our unique, lasting traits, the stuff that makes you consistently you, year after year. It's the field trying to map our fundamental character.
But of course, we don't live in a bubble, right? Social psychology reminds us of that. It explores the powerful and often totally invisible ways that other people shape our behavior, everything from peer pressure to why we help strangers.
And to wrap up our tour, we have human development. This field takes the long view. It studies how we grow and change across our entire lifespan, from our very first breath to our very last. So that's a whirlwind tour of the main building. But believe me, the architects are far from finished.
Psychology is a living, breathing science, and it's constantly adding new wings to tackle the big questions of our time.
And these new frontiers are tackling some of the most urgent issues out there. You've got peace psychology, working to understand conflict. Others are deep into how technology is fundamentally rewiring our brains. There's a huge focus on well-being, not just fixing what's broken, but figuring out how we can all flourish. And health psychology is proving that incredible link between what's going on in our heads and our physical health.
You know, from ancient philosophy all the way to modern neuroscience, this quest to understand ourselves is one of humanity's greatest adventures. We've built an incredible map of the mind, but there are still these huge, vast territories left to explore. And that leaves us with a final, really exciting thought. As we keep mapping, what's the next great mystery about being human that we should try to solve?